We had a good time. Lots of hot takes in the last one. We had a great time doing this, but I want to do this for the SSF version, which is substantially different kind of. It's not really that different. And I do want to go over some of the skills that I did leave off in the list in the first one. So we'll cover those first. People were asking about Toxic Rain. Toxic Rain, I don't like it in this league. I haven't liked it in a while. It's okay. I don't want to say it's like a bad league starter. It's okay. The problem is that it does require like a good amount of gear to start feeling good. Just the mechanics of Toxic Rain, it just doesn't leave for like a really good playstyle anymore, especially now since we're like juicing the fuck out of our maps. And I don't think it's going to be good in Ultimatum. It's definitely not good for like bossing if you are really low on gear. It requires a lot. You need your clusters. You need a good bow. You need a good quiver. You need a good amulet. Like there's a lot of stuff that goes into Toxic Rain for it to start actually feeling good and being competitive with a lot of the other skills. I want to say it's like C tier, a little bit like low C tier. I don't like it. I don't recommend it. I just don't like it. I don't recommend it. I don't like it. So we're going to put that at like C tier, B tier. In terms of SSF, it's even worse because you are beholden to crafting a lot of your stuff. You can't just go on the market and find like a fractured fucking quiver or something. So it's probably more like D tier in SSF. Yeah, I'm just not a fan of Toxic Rain. I not a fan. Let's just put it in here, D tier. D tier for the SSF tier. The other one I wanted to go over was Arc for the last one. I actually like Arc this league. I think Arc has a lot of fun playstyles. And it has like a really good transition period. I think that the buffs to it help it out a lot as well. Is it enough for it to be like a really strong contending league start? I'm not sure. It's probably like low B tier, possibly C tier. But I do like it, and I wouldn't be mad if someone chose it as like a league start. I personally wouldn't be mad if I chose it as a league start either. It just might require a little bit of gearing, a little bit of like smart mechanics to really make it pop off. But then once you kind of get to like that transition phase, you're probably going to do some really good damage. And it's like a good feeling skill, the way that it clears and that the extra chain just already being on the gem now. I'm going to put it C tier just to be safe with it, but I am leaning more to like B tier. And SSF is probably a solid C tier right now, unless I can find a good way to scale it and build it out in POB. All right, just first off the bat, we already know DD, the best SSF league starter. You requires no gear. You get straight to the end game. It's so strong. It has prolif, so it's going to be amazing in Ultimatum. It's just the best skill. It's the best skill in the game. It's insane, especially with the Vol version. Oh god. I like DD. I've been playing it for a really long time. I am a little bit sick of it, but I haven't played it in a few leagues in terms of like league starting it. So, you know, it is a top contender for a league start for me in SSF. It is in its own league. And then following that, I'm going to put Maw as an S tier for SSF. It isn't a DD tier in SSF and trade, but it's S tier because you do have to farm that helmet, which is easy. Like farming that helmet is easy. The Maw Mischief helmet, you can just get it in Cemetery, I believe. Cemetery, Graveyard, and Grave Through, I think are the 3 maps that hold it. I don't know if we have Graveyard this league, so there's only 2 maps that should hold it. But it's also common enough where you'll get it in like stacked decks. It's really a common helmet. You shouldn't have any problems farming it, but you do need to farm it in SSF, so that does pull it back a little bit from DD tier. Once you farm it, it is DD tier, but yeah, I'm going to keep it as S tier. It's an S tier league starter. It is the better DD in my opinion. It's just requires a little bit more time to get than the DD, because DD is just like extremely quick. Very, very fast build. Mana builds are F tier in SSF. You need Shaper's Touch, you need Ivory Tower, you need Indigon. It's really difficult to get mana going in SSF. I don't recommend you doing it until you have all of that gear. It's just not recommended. And even with like mana regen, you're just gonna have so many problems with mana in SSF until you have some of those items. It's just not, you can't really do it in SSF. So as a league starter, it's definitely an F tier. And for Ball Lightning, requiring like similar gearing structure to Arc, having that sort of like, let's transition into a mana build is probably around like the arc area. I'll probably put it with arc, ball lightning. Some sort of like ball lightning, Hyro, ball totem lightning is probably around C tier. It's probably going to be okay. But you're going to be kind of stuck in that like mid-late game area where you're farming for those items to fully transition into mana so you can get like really crazy numbers out of it. Blade Vortex, I do like for SSF. I think Blade Vortex for SSF is pretty good. It's just like a strong skill. In trade, I think the value of Blade Vortex is a little bit less in a League Start environment, but in SSF, it's not too bad. The poison version specifically, because you have that extra layer of tankiness with Pathfinder, you have the Prolif. I like Blade Vortex in SSF, and I think if you're looking for something to transition into like a really strong poison build or transition into something that's like crit based, I think Blade Vortex is going to do you well. I like it as like an A tier starter in SSF. Boneshatter is S tier. Is it DD tier? No, the buffs are crazy. I'm going to put it... It might be DD tier. I think Boneshatter might be DD tier. I think the buffs kind of push it over the edge. You don't have to worry about getting that divergent Boneshatter anymore. You don't have to worry about getting that extra helm enchant that gives you an extra layer of trauma. You're just getting more trauma more damage per trauma now straight on the gem. That like relieves so much extra pressure off of that axe that you have to craft because, well, see, now Essence isn't on the Atlas this league. So it's actually S tier because you need the essences to craft the item. I'm going to put it S tier. Man, maybe it's A tier. We don't have essences really until like a little bit later. So it might actually be A tier. I'm going to keep it as S tier just because I think you don't need the craziest axe to clear the game with. It's still really strong. It's still really fast. We'll keep it at S tier, but just remember you're not going to have essences early. Not enough to craft like a good axe. So you're going to have to make do with whatever you find and, you know, whatever you can craft and harvest or whatever. But yeah, this might be a little bit more like an A tier sort of thing. I totally forgot we didn't have essences. Burning Arrow is going to require like way too much. I don't even know why I have some of these on here. It's probably like a D tier. Corrupting Fever. What did I have it on the last one? A C tier? I'll probably keep it at C tier. Again, not having essences hurts, but this is more like a plus levels thing. It's kind of like harvest crafting a lot of it. We'll keep it C tier. Corrupting Fever is okay in SSF starting it. You are going to be a little bit pain, but you're kind of you're knowing that you have that expectation of like low damage until you start to really get those gems and jewels rather, and clusters and stuff. But that stuff isn't too hard to get in SSF. The hardest stuff is like crafting like your rings and your amulets and getting those plus levels there. And again, without essence being on the map device, you're going to have to do it with a full Atlas because you're going to have to go to the 7th gate to get essences. And that's going to cost a lot of money. Probably like, it's going to probably cost a pretty penny. I think they're nerfing essences for a reason this league. So just be mindful of that. Crackling Lance, I'm going to put as I'm going to put it as A tier. I like Crackling Lance this league. I think Crackling Lance is going to be really good. You just need plus levels. You need to make sure that you're tanky enough to withstand standing there for a little bit. But with like really strong cast speed, with really strong scaling vectors, it's good. I think it's going to be a really good SSF league starter this league. Cold Dot, I had it a lot lower. I'm probably going to put Cold Dot. Well, without Vortex, we really need to see the transfigure gems. It's still like D tier until we see what they've done with Vortex, because Vortex does so much of the damage of Cold Dot, and with it being like a cast, like you have to cast it now. Having a cast time, it's no longer like an instant thing and just that supplemental damage. You are now doing an extra skill, and I think that kind of puts Cold Dot in a bad spot. We're just gonna have to see. I really don't want to commit too much to it right now. Divine Ire, I also like around. I like it around Crackling Lance, but I don't think it's going to come online that quickly in SSF. So I think it's more like a B tier starter, possibly like high C tier. But I'm going to keep it B tier because I want to commit a little bit on Divine Ire. I think that one's going to be a good skill, and there's so many different ways you can build it. So whatever you find in SSF, you can just start building it in that way, whether it's like a good staff or if it's like a good scepter or if you want to go with the Ignite route. You know, there's a lot of different ways you can do it. I like Explosive Trap in SSF. There's so many different ways you can build it, and it just does like pretty damn good damage. I think it's an A tier starter. Probably one of the ones that I'm considering starting is Explosive Trap. I think it's going to be pretty popular this league. I like Frenzy, but in an SSF environment without essences, it's going to be rough. I'm going to probably put it in like D tier for now until I can start to build out some POBs that make me feel comfortable going into an SSF environment. SSF League Start environment is way different than an SSF trade environment. It's a completely different game, and you have to factor in like the Atlas structure, the type of items that you will find. I don't think you're going to find the items that you're going to need for like a strong Frenzy build early. That's going to take a little bit of time to get there. EA, I'm probably going to put as like a C tier. Yeah, I'm going to keep it as C tier. I really just don't like EA in terms of the ultimatum mechanic, and I plan on farming a lot of ultimatum this league. And early game EA is just not fun, in my opinion. I know some people may disagree. I don't think it's strong early. I think it needs a little bit of gearing to finally get to that stage. You need that Didian Dawn to really start to pop off and make it feel worthy of investing into. And without it, you're just not feeling good. The good thing about it is that you do get the bow. The bow is pretty, you know, the 6-link bow is relatively easy to get in SSF. But crafting that bow is going to be, it's a lot harder in a SSF environment than it is in a trade environment. It's not a lot harder, but it's just a little bit harder. Factor that in with, you know, the essence nerfs, and I'm not a fan of EA this league. I think EA is a little bit lower on the totem pole. And yeah, I know I am maybe in a minority there, but that's kind of how I feel. Oh, I forgot about Fire Trap in the last one. I think Fire Trap is obviously like an A, B tier skill. It's really strong. Losing that like RF component of it does hurt, but you know, it's still strong in itself as like an elementalist version. I like it as like B tier. I think it's good. I think it's a good skill. It scales really well. It's smooth. It's fun to play with. Yeah, I like it. I think it's, you know, you're gonna like, if we're gonna do like RF, you obviously can't play RF SSF as a league start this league. At least I don't think so. Until you get some like really good gear going on. So I wouldn't start RF. But if you do like a Wave of Conviction Fire Trap build, that's like an A tier starter. So maybe we should do something like that. It's really strong. Wave of Conviction Fire Trap is just like an extremely strong, confident, easy scaling build that you can spec into. Glacial Hammer, you're still gonna, I don't know, man. I don't think I like Glacial Hammer this league. Again, you don't have essences. Your Heat Shiver's nerfed. It's gonna be rough. I'm probably gonna put a D tier. Until someone shows me a good scenario, makes a good case for it. Again, Frenzy or Flicker, you really can't league start Flicker and SSF. We're gonna have to put that in F tier. It requires too much gear. Maybe a Paradoxica or a Void Forge. You need like a unique like that for this thing to really pop off. And again, you don't have essences in the beginning, so you can't just like craft a good item. Now, if someone shows me a Flicker build, like an Oros Flicker build that can produce like some good numbers, that has some good tankiness, I'll put it up there. I'm not afraid to put Flicker up higher because I think mechanically it's one of the best skills in the game. But in an SSF environment, on a league start, I wouldn't do it. Lightning Arrow, SSF, is an S tier league starter. Lightning Arrow is one of the best league starters I think you can do this league. It's extremely strong, extremely quick to use, scales extremely well. Same as an SSF. Everything with SSF, it's the same as an SSF. Actually, it might be a little bit more like an A tier because of the essence issue. Crafting that bow is going to be a little bit tougher. It's going to take a little bit longer. But yeah, like you can just find bows. Like that's the thing with bows. They've made bows so strong. You can just find like a good bow on the ground that will take you all the way to, you know, getting your void stones. It really isn't that much of a problem. It's not S tier in the sense of like you can you reliably have a extremely strong bow as with trade, but it is A tier. It's quick in that. Hexblast is a little bit lower. It's probably like C tier league starter in SSF. You really like. getting that Wrath Pit is just a gamble. You can't like farm it or anything like that. You just have to drop it. And that really is going to limit that transition phase into endgame. It's going to feel okay, but you need a lot of gear for Hexblast. Not a lot of gear, but you need specific gear for Hexblast to feel good. And getting that gear in SSF is tough. It's more like a C tier build, possibly D tier. I'm going to keep it D tier. But if you drop a Wrath Pith, it's A tier. So just keep that in mind. It's a D tier League starter, but say you drop a Wrath Pith and you're any one of these builds here, drop all these builds and just build into Hexblast because you're going to have a hell of a good time. Lightning Conduit, I like it as an A tier. You guys know my feelings on Lightning Conduit. I think it's underrated. Extremely strong. Doesn't really require much gear. The shock, like you can just get crazy shocks on enemies now and just do like the max amount of damage with Lightning Conduit. The fact that it's like AoE, it's got like scales with cast speed and scales with AoE, and it's just great. It's a great fucking skill. Now there's this mark that you can place on an enemy where it gives them phantasms. So I'm thinking maybe that's a good way to also play Lightning Conduit this league for single target. Because remember, it is AoE. There are overlaps with Lightning Conduit. So if you can just mark that enemy and he spits out 3 phantasms, that's a nice damage boost to your single target. And I really like Lightning Conduit this league. Forbidden Right is tough. It's tough. You can farm the shield, the Mahuaru shield, but outside of that, I wouldn't really recommend it. It's just in a league start environment. I feel like it's tough. It's tough to do. Oh, you keep it F tier. I wouldn't recommend it as a league start. I like Lightning. What is this? Lightning Strike. I like Lightning Strike. You don't have essences, so crafting that claw is going to be tough. So it's more like a B tier. Penance Brand, again, I don't know. I'm going to keep it C tier. I don't know where Penance Brand is going to land. I want to play with it before I commit to it because it is such a goofy, fucked up skill. The numbers look great, but I don't want to commit too hard on that. Reap, same, F tier. Now, Reap Fizz Dot is kind of D tier. If we're going to do like Reap Corrupting Fever, Fizz Dot build, it's like C, D tier. That's kind of where I would put them. Maybe I drop Corrupting Fever down a notch. Nah, I'll keep it like this. I like this sort of structure here. Reap hit based. You're not really doing that because you just need an Awakened Spell Cascade. You're just never gonna find one. Good luck. But as a Fizz Dot version, it's not terrible. Like you're gonna be using it with Corrupting Fever. And it's not a terrible build, but you do, again, you're relying so heavily on jewels and clusters, like filling your whole passive tree out with jewels and clusters and dot multis and +1s and all that stuff before you start to really feel good about it. Vol Reap does help, which is kind of why I'm putting it in D tier. It's probably like high D tier, C tier. Same with Corrupting Fever, I would say. I like Shattering Steel skills in SSF a lot. I like it B tier. I'm just apprehensive about A tier because the numbers on it are a little iffy. But again, it really all depends on that shotgunning mechanic and how easy it is to get with relatively low gear and where steel skills kind of land in terms of competitiveness. I really don't know. You know, removing that Call of Steel mechanic is interesting. You're really just relying on that like high amount of impale damage. But impales are really good. They're a really strong mechanic. Shockwave Totem is F tier. Unfortunately, in SSF, you can't really do it without an Astral Projector, and you're never really gonna get one. I tried to farm it this league, I couldn't get it, so I'm salty about it, and I'm gonna keep it F tier. Don't try it. If you drop an Astral Projector, again, this is like very similar to the what was the other one? It's very similar to the Hexblast build, where it's like if you drop an Astral Projector, then it's like DD tier. But that's not league start, you know what I mean? Siege Ballista is B tier. Siege Ballista is a B tier, high B tier, low A tier league starter in SSF because you do need uniques for this to work, but there are easy uniques to find. It's not in the sense of like you only need one unique like some of these builds, like Maw of Mischief, where you really only need one unique. Possibly two uniques. But these are like 2 farmable uniques. With this one, you just need like a few easy to get uniques that aren't necessarily farmable. You just have to hope you drop them. So yeah, I like it as a B tier. I don't think it's A or S tier like I had it in the previous video. I like it. I think it's going to be really good and really strong. And you definitely are going to end up with those uniques at some point. It's just how long it's going to take you to get there, I'm not necessarily sure. I'm thinking more so like the deck stacking Hierophant version. That's kind of where I'm thinking. If you know any other builds that utilize Siege Ballista in a different way that doesn't rely so heavily on uniques, let me know. I'm very curious about that. Spark F tier. It's probably more like D tier still. I don't like Spark this league. I really don't like Spark. I do like SRS and SSF. Yes, SRS and SSF is good. And yeah, and Tornado Shot and SSF. Again, you don't. It's kind of hurting this league because of the essences thing. As a league starter, it's kind of rough. Someone in the comments made a case about Mana Forged Arrows. That's a different build. I wouldn't consider that really a Tornado Shot build. When I'm thinking Tornado Shot, I'm thinking mainly Tornado Shot is your main damage dealer. You're converting it to cold, or you're doing some sort of crit, or you're really scaling like max projectiles. And in order to get to that stage, it does require a lot of gear. It's probably more... I'm going to keep it C tier because we do get those extra projectiles, which is like a really big buff already as a league start environment. But I would highly recommend you just play Lightning Arrow until you can get some of the gear for the Tornado Shot. So this is my list here. Nothing really compares to DD at the moment in SSF. It is in a league of its own. We don't have essences on the Atlas, right? So that like throws a big wrench into your plans. But we do have Ultimatum, which means that uniques, there will be some higher end uniques that will be more common because of that. So that's also something to think about, right? Like the economy of SSF is always shifting. You have to be mindful and adapt with that. And if you are relying on a build that needs like 150 essences or shrieking essences of contempt, that's going to be tough. That's going to be tough to get in a league start environment. That's going to take you some time to get there. So is the build going to feel good while you get to that point? Probably for a couple of them. Like Boneshatter will, Boneshatter will. But some of these other builds, probably not, right? So just keep that into consideration when you're going into SSF. The unfortunately crafting in SSF is really bad. It's just really bad, and with essences being taken off the Atlas, it's even worse. You just kind of have to get lucky. If you drop like a really lucky fracture, you're off to the races. You know what I mean? So it all depends on what you drop, and that's how SSF is played. Usually you start with like one of these top builds here. I would say anything from DD to A tier. You can safely, reliably start, and it's going to feel good all the way through. You're going to get your Void Stones. You're going to be able to farm what you need to farm. But, as soon as you start dropping the items that you need for some of these builds, then these builds can come online and you can start playing them. But that's usually how SSF is played. It's like SSF tells you what builds you're playing. You don't really you don't really go into it with a build plan in mind, right? So outside of like your first league starter, which again, I would stick to A to DD tier. Outside of that, I wouldn't, you might have a bad time with some of these. All right. Peace.